The war came without warning. For years, Earth had listened to the silence of space, believing it was alone. Then one night, hundreds of burning stars fell from the sky. They were not meteors. They were ships. Captain Arlen Cross stood on the command deck of the Sol Vanguard, his heart pounding against his ribs. The radar bloomed with unknown signatures fast and bright. Within minutes, the calm blue of Earth's orbit turned into a storm of light and destruction. "Unknown fleet approaching from Sector 9, the comm officer said, her voice trembling. Arlen's jaw tightened. "All defense units, form perimeter. No one fires unless fired upon." But the first shot wasn't human. A plasma bolt struck one of the orbital defense stations, vaporizing it in seconds. The shockwave rattled through space. Alarms screamed. The war had begun. Earth's fleets rose to meet the invaders. The skies above the planet flared with energy beams, broken hulls, and the dying echoes of thousands of voices. Arlen watched as ships were torn apart like paper in a storm. The enemy's technology was beyond anything human engineers had built. Fast, precise, and merciless. He didn't know who they were, or what they wanted. Only that they were not here to talk. Hours turned into chaos. The Vanguard fought fiercely, but for every enemy they destroyed, two more appeared. The stars themselves seemed to burn with anger. Then came the order that no commander wanted to hear. "Evacuate orbit. Pull back to Luna base. Earth defenses are collapsing." Arlen's hands clenched around the railing. "Retreat." The word tasted bitter, but there was no choice. Humanity was bleeding in the void. As the Vanguard turned toward the moon, a sudden flash blinded the bridge crew. A massive energy burst hit their port side. Metal screamed. Systems went dark. Gravity failed. Arlen was thrown across the deck. The last thing he remembered was fire and silence. He woke to the sound of a soft hum. His body ached. His vision blurred. Above him, a ceiling of pale blue light glowed softly. The air was clean, sterile, and faintly sweet. He wasn't in a human facility. For a long moment, he thought he was dead. Then he heard a voice, calm, melodic, and strangely comforting. "Do not move too fast, human. Your injuries are still healing." He turned his head slowly. Standing beside him was a figure, tall, graceful, and unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin was a smooth shade of silver blue, her eyes large and full of light. She wore a form-fitting white suit with soft patterns that pulsed like veins of light. An alien. Arlen's heart raced. He tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. "Where am I?" She tilted her head, a curious smile forming on her lips. "You are safe. You were found drifting among the wreckage. My unit rescued you before your vessel broke apart." Her voice was soft, almost musical. Every word carried warmth, not threat. He studied her face, delicate yet strong. Her hair, silver as starlight, was braided neatly along her shoulders. "You saved me," he managed to whisper. The alien nurse's smile deepened, faint amusement flickering in her glowing eyes. "You held my hand while you were unconscious. You would not let go. It was curious." She let out a small melodic giggle. "So I stayed beside you until you woke." Arlen blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. Humanity had gone to war with aliens. Yet here he was, alive, tended by one. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his ribs. She quickly placed a gentle hand on his chest. "Do not force yourself. You are safe now." For the first time since the war began, Arlen felt peace. But in the back of his mind, questions burned. Why had they saved him? What did they want? And where were the rest of his people? The nurse turned, adjusting a device that emitted faint light over his body. "You will recover soon," she said softly. "Your species is resilient." Her tone carried admiration and then something else. Sadness? As she stepped closer, the light reflected in her eyes, revealing something human-like. Empathy. For a brief moment, the war outside felt far away. Then from beyond the walls, a low tremor shook the room. The nurse's expression changed. Her smile faded. She looked toward the ceiling, her posture tense. Arlen noticed the subtle change in the room's lighting, red warnings flashing faintly. "What's happening?" he asked. She turned back to him, her voice steady but urgent. "Rest. Please, you must not move." But in her eyes he saw fear, and in that moment Arlen knew. The war wasn't over. The room was silent again after the tremor faded. The soft hum of machines returned, But the alien nurse didn't move for a few seconds. Her silver blue eyes watched the ceiling, as if she could see through the walls. Arlen lay still, pretending to rest. He studied her carefully. The calm kindness on her face had turned into something sharper, alert, cautious. He finally broke the silence. Was that an attack? She hesitated. You should not worry about that. You are safe here. Her tone was kind, but something in her voice told him she was hiding the truth. I fought in the defense fleet, he said quietly. I know the sound of weapons even through walls. The nurse looked at him again, then sighed softly, like someone who had been holding a secret too long. There are others who do not want you here, she said finally. Not all in our fleet believe in saving humans. Arlen's eyes narrowed. Then why did you? She seemed surprised by the question. Her silver-white braids slipped forward as she leaned closer. You were dying, she said simply. Life should not be wasted because of fear. He didn't know how to answer. He had seen aliens destroy whole cities, and now one of them spoke to him with compassion. The nurse turned to a panel beside his bed, checking his readings. My name is Lyra, she said softly. I am a medical officer of the Cathari Union. Cathari? Arlen repeated the word slowly. Is that what your people are called? She nodded. We came from beyond the Perseus Arm. Your species detected our signals years ago, but did not understand them. She looked away. When our fleets entered your system, our leaders believed your world was preparing to attack. That's not true, Arlen said firmly. We were afraid, yes, but we never fired first. Lyra's expression softened. Fear creates war faster than hate. For a moment, silence settled between them again. The tension in the room faded a little, replaced by something fragile, understanding. Then the door opened. Another alien entered, taller, armored, with sharp metallic patterns on his suit. His gaze was colder than Lyra's, his movements precise. He spoke in a low, commanding tone. Lyra, step away from the human. Arlen felt his heart race again. The man's eyes, glowing faintly gold, looked at him as if he were a dangerous animal. Lyra straightened, calm but firm. He is under my care, Commander Revan. His condition is stable. Revan's voice was clipped. He should not be here. Orders from High Command are clear. Human survivors must be transferred for interrogation. Arlen clenched his fists. Interrogation? I'm not your enemy. Revan ignored him, his gaze fixed on Lyra. You risk punishment by disobeying, medic. Lyra met his eyes without fear. Then I will accept it. But he is injured. Moving him now will kill him. Revan's jaw tightened. He took one step closer, towering over her. The glow from his armor reflected off her pale skin. You speak as if you care for him. Lyra didn't flinch. I care for life. That is my duty. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then Revan turned sharply toward the door. You have one cycle, he said coldly. Then he goes to command. He left without another word. When the door closed, Lyra exhaled deeply and sat beside Arlen again. The calm returned to her voice, though her eyes were troubled. I'm sorry, she whispered. Revan is loyal to our council. He sees you as a soldier, not a person. Arlen looked at her with quiet gratitude. And you see me differently? Lyra smiled faintly. You held my hand when you were unconscious, remember? You didn't see me as a monster, you just didn't want to be alone. Her words cut deeper than he expected. He had been trained to see aliens as threats. But her voice, her gentleness, made that belief crack. Outside, faint tremors echoed again. Somewhere in the distance, alarms began to sound. Lyra rose and moved quickly to the window, looking out at the dark void of space. A massive shadow passed by, the outline of a warship, enormous and silent. Its hull shimmered with faint red lights. They found us, she said quietly. Arlen struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain. Who? Lyra's eyes darkened. The Varn Dominion, our enemies. They destroyed your fleet, and they want you dead. The lights in the room dimmed. The hum of engines grew louder. The medical bay shuddered again. Lyra turned back to him, her voice urgent but calm. You must trust me now, human. If we stay here, we both die. She reached out her hand toward him. Her eyes, glowing softly, met his. For the first time, he realized she wasn't just saving him. She was risking everything. Arlen hesitated only a moment before taking her hand. The floor trembled again. Alarms echoed through the corridor outside. Red lights flashed on the ceiling like a heartbeat. Lyra tightened her grip on Arlen's hand. "Can you walk?" "I'll try," he said, pushing himself up. Pain rushed through his body, but he forced his legs to move. The machines around his bed hissed and clicked as he tore away the tubes. Lyra moved to a small locker, her hands swift and precise. She pulled out a thin metallic frame and pressed it against his chest. The device unfolded into a sleek armor vest that adjusted to his size automatically. "It will protect you," she said, "and hide your human signature from their scanners." Arlen blinked. "You planned this?" Her eyes flickered with light. "I hoped I wouldn't need to, but I knew this day would come." The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a long corridor filled with soft blue lights. In the distance, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed closer. Lyra looked left, then right, before pulling him along. They moved quickly through the corridor, passing through rooms where other Cathari lay injured. Some stared at them in confusion. One tried to call out, but Lyra gave a subtle shake of her head, and the alien fell silent. Arlen felt the weight of what she was doing, betraying her command. Her people, all to save him. When they reached an intersection, Lyra stopped and placed her hand on a glass panel. The wall shimmered and split open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. "In here," she said. The tunnel was dim and cold. The sound of engines vibrated through the metal walls. As they crawled forward, Arlen glanced at her. Her calm face glowed faintly in the soft blue light. "Why are they fighting?" he asked. "The Cathari and the Varn. You said they were enemies. Why start a war that kills both?" Lyra paused. "Because both sides believe they are protecting life. The Varn claim we are reckless. We use energy that bends stars and tears space. They see us as a danger to the galaxy. And what about us?" Arlen asked quietly. Lyra gave a faint, sad smile. "Humans are caught in between. Your world was in the wrong place when the war began. The Varn destroyed your fleet to send us a message." Arlen's fists clenched. A message written in blood. They continued in silence until they reached a small hatch. Lyra opened it and led him into a chamber full of glowing tubes and strange machinery. "This is the reactor wing," she whispered. "We can use the escape pods from here." Arlen nodded, but before they could move, a deep, metallic voice echoed through the room. "Lyra, of the Cathari Union, you are under arrest for treason." They turned. Commander Revan stood in the doorway, his golden eyes burning with fury. Behind him, 2 soldiers raised their weapons. "Revan," Lyra said softly, stepping in front of Arlen. "Please, listen to me." Revan's voice was like ice. "You risked our mission. You saved an enemy soldier. You have dishonored the Union." Arlen took a step forward. "If you want someone to blame, blame me. I didn't ask her to." "Silence, human," Revan barked. "You should have died with your fleet." Lyra moved quickly, placing herself between them. "He is not our enemy. The Varn will destroy both our worlds if we keep fighting. We can stop them if we work together." Revan's expression hardened. "You sound like them. You have forgotten who you are." For a moment, time froze. Then Revan raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Lyra pressed her hand to the floor panel. A wave of blue light erupted, pushing everyone backward. The lights flickered, alarms screamed again, and the reactor core began to hum dangerously. "Lyra!" Arlen shouted. "What did you do?" She turned to him, her eyes glowing brighter now. "I overloaded the shield grid. We have minutes before the system collapses. Run!" Revan tried to stand, shouting orders to his soldiers, but smoke filled the room. Lyra grabbed Arlen's arm and pulled him toward another hatch on the far side. They stumbled through it as explosions shook the walls. They ran down a narrow passage filled with sparks and flickering lights. The roar of the reactor grew louder behind them. At the end of the hall, Lyra stopped in front of a small pod. She placed her hand on the control panel and the door opened. "Get inside," she said. "What about you?" Arlen asked. "I'll launch it manually." "The system is damaged," he shook his head. "No way. We go together." Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. "Humans are stubborn. So are you," he said quietly. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The glow from the burning ship reflected in her eyes. Then she stepped into the pod beside him. As the door closed, the world outside turned to fire. The pod ejected with a violent jolt, spinning away from the ship. Through the small viewport, Arlen saw the Cathari vessel explode in a bloom of blue light. He looked at Lyra. She was breathing heavily, her gaze fixed on the wreckage. "I destroyed my home," she whispered. Arlen reached out and placed his hand over hers. You saved a life. That matters more. Outside, stars drifted by like silent witnesses. The war had taken everything from them, yet somehow in the middle of the endless dark they were still alive. The escape pod drifted in silence. Only the faint hum of its engines broke the emptiness. Through the small round window, stars stretched like rivers of light across the dark. Arlen sat still, breathing heavily. His ribs still hurt and his hands shook from the adrenaline. Lyra sat across from him, eyes fixed on the endless night. The soft blue glow of the control screen lit her face. Any signals? He asked. None, she replied quietly. We are far from any fleet now. The blast threw us beyond the Cathari network. Arlen leaned back against the wall. Then we're alone. Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, for now. They both fell silent. The pod rocked gently, floating through space like a leaf in a dark sea. After a few minutes, Lyra stood and moved toward a small console. Her hands glided over the controls. Strange alien symbols flickered on the screen. What are you doing? Arlen asked, scanning for a planet with atmosphere. Somewhere safe to land before life support runs out. Arlen rubbed his forehead. How long do we have? Less than 8 hours, he exhaled sharply. Great. Lyra looked back at him with a faint smile. You humans always speak as if time listens. That made him chuckle despite the situation. And you aliens don't? She tilted her head. We try not to. Time never listens. It only moves. Her words were calm, but her eyes told another story, worry hiding behind patience. Arlen noticed small burns on her wrist, probably from the explosion. You're hurt, he said. She looked down, surprised. It's nothing. Let me see, he said gently. Reluctantly, she held out her arm. The burn was dark and glowing faintly beneath her silver-blue skin. He tore a piece of cloth from his sleeve and wrapped it carefully around her wrist. Lyra watched his hands move. You're a strange human. Most would not help the one who saved them. Arlen smiled weakly. Most haven't met you. She said nothing, but her faint smile returned. The scanner beeped suddenly. Lyra turned back to the console. There, a planet nearby. Oxygen. Gravity close to yours, temperature stable. Arlen's eyes brightened. Then let's go. Lyra's fingers danced over the controls. The pod rotated slowly, aiming toward a distant blue-green sphere. As they began descent, turbulence shook the cabin. The hull creaked and sparks flew from one of the panels. Hold on, Lyra shouted. The re-entry shield is unstable. The pod blazed through the atmosphere, flames licking across the window. Arlen grabbed the seat's edge. For a moment it felt like the whole sky was on fire. Then, with a deafening crash, the pod hit ground and slid across sand. When everything stopped, silence returned, except for the crackle of cooling metal. Arlen coughed and unstrapped himself. Still alive? Lyra nodded, brushing dust from her hair. Mostly. They stepped outside. The air was warm and smelled faintly of rain. The sky glowed pale orange. Towering rock formations rose around them like ancient statues. Strange plants shimmered under the twin suns. Arlen took a deep breath. At least it's not poison. Lyra scanned the area with a small device. No predators nearby? We can rest. He sat on a rock and looked at the broken pod. So, what now? She glanced at the horizon. We find shelter, repair the beacon, and send a signal. Someone will come, Cathari or human. And if it's Varn? He asked. Lyra didn't answer. Her silence said everything. They began to walk toward a canyon where shadows promised shade. The sand sparkled beneath their boots. Every step felt heavy, but the world was strangely beautiful. As they walked, Arlen asked, Lyra, before the war, did your people ever try to talk to us? To warn us? She hesitated. Once, long ago. But your leaders didn't believe it was real. They thought it was a trick, Arlen sighed. That sounds like us. Lyra looked at him, curiosity in her voice. Do all humans fear what they don't understand? He thought for a moment. Maybe. But we also try to fix what we break and when it's not too late. She smiled softly. Then maybe it isn't too late for either of us. They reached the canyon and found a cave half hidden behind silver plants. Inside, the air was cool. Lyra used a glowing crystal from her belt to light the space. She set up a small device that emitted a gentle hum. What's that? Arlen asked. A field generator. It hides our energy signature. Smart, he said. They sat quietly for a while. Outside, the twin suns began to sink, painting the sky with violet light. Arlen looked at her. The soft glow of her skin, the calm strength in her face. "Lyra," he said softly, "why did you really save me?" She looked into the light for a long time before answering. "Because when I found you in the wreckage, you reached for me, even in pain. You didn't see an enemy. You saw someone who could help. No one ever looked at me like that before." Her voice trembled slightly. Arlen swallowed. "Then maybe the war doesn't have to end in death." She turned toward him, her eyes glowing faintly brighter. "Maybe it can end with trust." Outside, the night fell over the alien world. In the distance, the stars shone again, cold, endless, and waiting. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time since the war began, they didn't feel alone. Morning light poured into the cave, soft and golden. Thin beams slipped between the cracks in the stone, dancing on Lyra's face as she slept. Arlen sat nearby, staring at the pale sky beyond the entrance. The world outside was quiet, too quiet. He still couldn't believe he was alive. Only days ago he was fighting a war in space. Now he was stranded on an alien planet beside a being who should have been his enemy. Lyra stirred and slowly opened her eyes. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. Arlen smiled. "Didn't feel like dreaming." She sat up, her silver white hair falling loosely over her shoulders. "Dreams help the mind heal," he shrugged. "Maybe I'll heal without them." Lyra looked at him for a moment and then stood. "You humans speak bravely even when you are afraid," he chuckled. "We call that pretending." Outside, the twin suns had begun to rise. The air shimmered gently above the sand, and strange creatures moved among the glowing plants. Some looked like birds made of glass. Others crawled slowly with shells that glowed faint blue. Lyra adjusted her wrist device. "I will search for water. Stay close." They began to walk deeper into the canyon. Their boots crunched softly on the rock. The sound of distant wind echoed like whispers through the stone. After some time, Lyra stopped. Her scanner blinked with light. "There is movement ahead." Arlen tensed. "What kind of movement?" Before she could answer, a low growl filled the air. From behind the rocks, a creature emerged, tall, with 4 legs and dark metallic skin that shimmered under sunlight. Its eyes burned bright red. Arlen stepped back. "That doesn't look friendly." Lyra raised her hand. "Do not run. It will chase." The beast lowered its head, claws digging into the ground. Then it charged. Lyra moved fast, too fast for human eyes. She grabbed Arlen's arm and pulled him aside just as the creature smashed into the rock wall. Dust exploded around them. Arlen coughed, reaching for a broken metal rod from the ground. The creature turned again, roaring. "Keep low," Lyra shouted. Arlen ducked as she pressed her palm against her wristband. A flash of blue energy shot out, striking the creature's chest. It stumbled, screeched, and fled into the distance. Arlen stared at her in disbelief. "You could have done that earlier," she smiled faintly. "I needed to be sure it was not intelligent life." He laughed nervously. "Next time I'll take your word for it." Lyra checked her scanner again. "There is water not far from here. A river, maybe underground." They followed a narrow path until the canyon opened into a small valley. A stream of crystal-clear water glowed softly beneath the sand. Lyra knelt and filled a small container, scanning it for toxins. "It's safe," she said. Arlen drank greedily, the cold water soothing his throat. "I never thought I'd miss this so much." Lyra watched him with quiet amusement. "You value the small things again," he nodded. "War makes you forget how beautiful simple things are." She looked toward the horizon, her voice gentle. "On my world, beauty is not in peace but in survival." Her words lingered between them. Arlen realized how heavy her choice must have been, turning against her own command, losing everything to save one human. "Lyra," he said slowly, "you risked your life for me. Why keep helping now? You could leave." She met his eyes, calm and sincere. "Because I still believe saving one life can change more than ending 100. Before he could reply, her scanner beeped again, sharper this time. She frowned. "What is it?" "A signal," she whispered. "It's weak, but it's not Cathari, and not human." Arlen felt a chill. "Then who?" Lyra looked up at the orange sky. "Varn." The name hung heavy in the air. She tapped the scanner again. "They are searching this region. Maybe they detected the crash. We must hide." Arlen's pulse quickened. "How long before they find us?" "Hours, maybe less." They hurried back toward the cave. Lyra worked quickly, setting up her field generator again. She strengthened the power flow, creating a bubble of invisibility. Arlen watched her hands move, steady and focused. You've done this before, she nodded. On battlefields. When saving the wounded. Outside, the wind began to howl. The sky darkened as a shadow passed overhead. Something enormous. Through the cave's entrance, Arlen glimpsed a shape like a floating fortress. Tell me that's not what I think it is, he whispered. Lyra's voice was barely audible. Varn patrol cruiser. They both crouched low. The ship's engines thundered above them, shaking the ground. The glow of its searchlights swept across the valley. Arlen's heart pounded. If they find us... They won't, Lyra said, gripping his hand tightly. Trust me, the light passed. The roar faded into distance. Slowly, the sky cleared again. Arlen exhaled, trembling slightly. Lyra still held his hand. Neither moved for several seconds. When she finally let go, she smiled faintly. You see? I told you, time never listens, but sometimes it gives mercy. He smiled back. Then maybe mercy's still out there for both our worlds. Outside, the twin suns vanished behind the mountains. The valley glowed in faint blue light. Inside the cave, the two survivors sat side by side, human and alien. Enemies once, but now something more. Allies against the darkness waiting in the stars. Night had fallen again on the strange planet. The twin moons hung low above the valley, painting the sand in silver light. Arlen sat by the cave's entrance, staring at the horizon. The stars seemed closer here, as if the universe itself were watching. Inside, Lyra worked quietly beside the glowing beacon she had been trying to repair for hours. Sparks flickered each time she touched the power core. How's it going? Arlen asked. It will send a signal, she said, voice steady. But I don't know who will answer first, friend or enemy. Arlen gave a tired smile. That's kind of the story of my life. She looked up from the device, a faint smile touching her lips. You humans find humor even when death is near. Maybe that's why we survive, he said softly. Lyra looked at him for a moment longer, then returned to her work. The hum of the beacon filled the silence. Outside, the wind shifted. Something far away echoed like thunder, though the sky was clear. Arlen stood alert. What was that? Lyra froze. Engines. Low orbit. Someone's here. Arlen grabbed the small metal rod he'd used as a weapon before. Varn? She checked her scanner. The light on its screen pulsed red. Yes, they found us faster than expected. Arlen's pulse raced. Can we run? There's nowhere to run. If they scan this area again, they'll see through the field. He looked toward the beacon. Then turn it off. Lyra shook her head. I can't. Once it started, it sent our location. The signal is out there now. She stood quickly, pulling open a small compartment and retrieving 2 breathing masks. We must move before they land. They ran through the canyon, the sand soft under their boots. Above them, a faint red glow streaked across the sky. A Varn dropship descending fast. The ground shook when it landed. The sound of metal against stone echoed through the valley. Arlen and Lyra crouched behind a rock formation. From the ship's open hatch, tall figures stepped out. Black armor, glowing crimson eyes. Their movements were precise and silent, like machines that breathed. Arlen whispered, How many? 6? No, more, Lyra said quietly. A full retrieval unit. He frowned. Retrieval? For what? For us, she answered. The soldiers spread out, scanning the ground with red beams. Lyra adjusted her wristband, activating a faint shimmer around them. The air rippled slightly, the cloaking field. One of the Varn soldiers paused, looking in their direction. Arlen held his breath. The beam swept over the rocks, stopped for a moment, then moved on. Minutes passed like hours. When the soldiers finally moved deeper into the valley, Lyra whispered, Come. There's an old ruin nearby. It may hide us. They crept through the shadows until they reached a cluster of black stones half buried in sand. The shapes looked ancient, maybe older than both their civilizations. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Arlen ran his hand over one. What is this place? Lyra looked around, awe in her eyes. Not Cathari, not Varn, something before both. She knelt and brushed dust from a panel carved with spirals. The stone beneath shimmered like glass. When she touched it, the whole ruin came alive with pale blue light. Lyra, Arlen whispered. What did you do? I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. It responded to my energy. A low hum filled the chamber. In the center, a crystal rose from the floor, glowing brighter each second. Inside it, light twisted and formed images, ships, stars, and two species locked in battle. Arlen watched, stunned. "It's showing the war." Lyra shook her head. "No, it's showing how it began." The image shifted, a single explosion near a red giant star. Then came waves of destruction spreading through space. Words appeared in alien script, and Lyra translated softly. "The rift of origin, created by those who sought to control life. A warning to all who forget balance." Arlen frowned. "A warning?" Lyra stared at the crystal. "The Kethari used this kind of power once. We tore space itself trying to create energy from stars. The Varn tried to stop us, and the war began." "So they were right," Arlen said quietly. "Your people started it." Her shoulders sank. "Yes, but the Varn destroyed entire worlds in revenge. There was no right side after that." Before they could say more, the ground shook again. A deep voice echoed from outside the ruins. "Lyra of the Kethari, surrender the human and the beacon. You are surrounded." Revan. Arlen's eyes widened. "That's him, isn't it?" Lyra nodded slowly, her face pale. "Commander Revan. He must have survived the explosion." The voice came again, louder. "Do not resist. The Varn offer alliance. They only want the human." Arlen clenched his fists. "Of course they do." Lyra looked at him, her expression firm. "They want your DNA. Human cells survived the rift energy. You could be the key to controlling it. So they want to turn me into a weapon." "Yes," she whispered, "and Revan will give you to them to save his people." Outside, the ruins filled with red light. Soldiers approached, their shadows stretching across the sand. Arlen turned to Lyra. "What do we do?" Her eyes glowed faintly as she reached for his hand. "We do what humans always do," she said. "We fight to stay alive." The hum from the ancient crystal grew louder, reacting to her energy, or maybe to both of them. The air around them shimmered with power. Revan's voice shouted again, closer now. "Last warning." Arlen looked at Lyra, determination burning in his eyes. "Then let's make our own warning." She nodded once. Together they faced the glowing crystal as its light surrounded them, a storm of energy waiting to be unleashed. Outside, the Varn and Kethari forces closed in, unaware that inside the ruin something far older and stronger was waking up. The ancient ruin pulsed with light. Blue waves rippled across the walls, humming like a heartbeat. The air shimmered as dust floated upward, glowing softly. Arlen shielded his eyes. "What's happening?" Lyra stared at the rising crystal, her voice shaking. "It's responding to us. Both of us." The glow deepened to gold, spreading through the floor like veins of light. Symbols appeared, unfamiliar and alive, swirling around them in circles of energy. Outside, Commander Revan and the Varn soldiers approached the entrance. One of them aimed a scanner at the ruins. Energy surge detected, unknown frequency. Revan's jaw tightened. "Prepare to breach. The artifact is awakening." Inside, Lyra tried to step back, but the light followed her. It reached her arm, wrapping around her wrist like gentle fire. The same happened to Arlen. His armor flickered as glowing patterns formed on his skin. "Lyra," he shouted. It's inside me." "Don't resist it," she said quickly. "It's reading us, measuring something." Arlen's heart pounded. Visions flashed in his mind. Stars collapsing, ships exploding, and two civilizations burning across the galaxy. He gasped and fell to his knees. Lyra dropped beside him, holding his shoulder. Her eyes shone bright silver. "It's showing us the truth. The first war." In their minds, images unfolded. The creators, a long-lost race that built the rift to draw power from dying suns. They wanted peace through control, but their greed broke the fabric of space. Their creations, the Kethari and the Varn, were born from the fragments of that catastrophe. "We are their children," Lyra whispered, trembling. "Our species were never meant to fight. We were meant to guard this technology, Arlen's voice was hoarse. And instead, we destroyed everything they built. Outside, Revan shouted, "Now, breach the walls." Explosions shook the ruins. Dust and debris rained down. The soldiers stormed in, weapons glowing red. Revan stepped forward, his armor scorched but unbroken. "Lyra!" he yelled. "Step away from the human!" She stood, her body still glowing faintly. "Revan, listen to me. The artifact holds the truth. The war was a lie." "Enough," he barked. "You speak madness. That device is corrupt. You've let the human poison your mind." Arlen stood beside her, weak but determined. "She's telling the truth. The war started because of the rift. The Varn and Kithari are fighting for a mistake your ancestors made." Revan aimed his weapon at Arlen. "Silence!" Before he could fire, the crystal pulsed again, harder this time. A beam of golden light burst outward, throwing everyone back. The Varn soldiers screamed as their armor sparked. Revan hit the ground, stunned. Lyra and Arlen stood in the center of the storm. The light connected them, human and alien, two lives joined by the same pulse. Lyra looked at him. "It's reacting to us, to our bond." Arlen nodded slowly, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "Then maybe we can stop it. Together." Lyra closed her eyes, placing her hand on the crystal. "Help me focus. The energy is alive and it feels emotions." He stepped closer, pressing his palm beside hers. "What do we do?" "Think of peace," she whispered. "Not war, not hate. Just life." He took a deep breath. In that moment he remembered Earth, the oceans, the sound of wind, the laughter of people who never knew this war. He remembered the first time he saw Lyra smile. Light filled the room, pure, endless, and calm. The ruins shook, but not from violence, from release. The energy burst upward into the sky like a beacon. The Varn soldiers fell to their knees, their scanners overloading. Outside, in orbit, ships on both sides detected the surge. Commanders shouted, confused as their systems lit up with a single signal. "Balance restored. Cease conflict." Inside the ruins, the crystal dimmed. The symbols faded into the stone. Silence returned. Arlen opened his eyes. The glow had vanished from his skin. Lyra swayed, exhausted, and he caught her before she fell. "You did it," he whispered. She smiled weakly. "We did it. The artifact heard us." Revan groaned and tried to stand. His armor was cracked, his expression torn between fury and awe. "What have you done?" Lyra looked at him, her tone calm and sad. "We reminded the galaxy what it was made for. Not destruction, but creation." Revan stared at them for a long moment. His weapon trembled in his hand, then he dropped it. The sound echoed like an ending note in a song. He stepped back slowly. "The Varn will come for you both," he said. "And the Kithari will call you traitor." Arlen helped Lyra stand. "Then we'll face them together." Revan looked at them one last time. "You changed something today, even if the galaxy doesn't see it yet." Then he turned and walked away into the shadows. Lyra leaned against Arlen, her voice barely a whisper. "The beacon will carry the signal. The war will stop, or begin to." Arlen looked up at the stars through the cracks in the ceiling. "Then we've given them a chance. That's all that matters." Lyra smiled faintly. "You humans, you always believe in second chances." He smiled back. "Guess it's our best habit." Outside, the night sky burned with light as the beacon reached across the stars, calling to every ship, every world, and every heart still fighting. A message of peace, carried by a human and an alien nurse who refused to let go of each other's hand. The sky above the ruins glowed faint gold long after the beacon stopped shining. Lyra and Arlen stood at the entrance, watching faint trails of light vanish into the stars. The world was silent, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Arlen looked at Lyra. "Do you think they heard it?" She nodded slowly. "Every ship in orbit. Every command post. The signal can't be ignored," he smiled faintly. Then maybe the war really is over. Lyra's expression softened. Wars don't end in a moment, Arlen, but sometimes peace begins with one. They started walking down the valley. The air smelled different, cleaner, alive. When they reached the broken escape pod, its panels still smoking, Lyra knelt to check the beacon again. It's sending one last burst, she said. A message for whoever finds us, Arlen frowned. A message saying what? She looked up at him with a small smile. That two enemies found something greater than war. He chuckled. That's poetic. You sure you're not part human? She tilted her head playfully. Not yet. They both laughed, tired, relieved, human in every way that mattered. Hours passed. In orbit, fleets across both sides received the beacon's data, the proof of the ancient war, the truth of the rift, and a single universal command. Cease hostilities. Restore balance on the Cathari flagship, generals argued. On the Varn command ship, sensors overloaded. Confusion rippled through every channel, every soldier, every leader. For the first time in centuries, silence replaced orders to fire. Down on the planet, Arlen gathered dry branches near the cave and built a small fire. The orange light danced on the stone walls. Lyra sat across from him, her silver skin reflecting the warmth. Humans use fire to survive, she said softly. It's beautiful and dangerous, he smiled, like us. They shared quiet laughter that slowly faded into peace. Then, far above, a faint rumble echoed, a ship entering atmosphere. Lyra looked up sharply. They found us. Arlen stood. Cathari or Varn? Her scanner blinked green. Neither. It's human, Arlen froze. Human? That can't be. The fleet was destroyed. Lyra adjusted the frequency, her eyes wide. It's a rescue vessel, small. They must have picked up the beacon's coordinates. A white light streaked across the sky, growing brighter until it hovered above the canyon. The ship descended slowly, kicking up dust. Arlen shielded his eyes. They're landing. The hatch opened and voices echoed. Human voices. Soldiers stepped out in silver suits marked with Earth's emblem. One of them shouted, "Identify yourself!" Arlen raised his hand. "Captain Arlen Cross of the Sol Vanguard. Survivors here." The soldiers ran forward. One stopped, staring at Lyra. "Sir." "That's not human." Arlen stepped in front of her. "She's not the enemy. She saved my life. She ended the signal that stopped the war." The soldier hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon. "Understood, Captain." Lyra looked at Arlen, her voice quiet. "You don't need to defend me. Your people won't accept—" He interrupted gently. "Then they'll learn to." For a moment she simply looked at him. The human who once called her enemy, now standing beside her as ally, maybe even friend. "Will I ever see your world?"
she asked softly. He smiled.
"If I have a say in it, yes." They turned toward the ship. The ramp glowed with bright white light, and together they walked up side by side. As the vessel rose into the sky, the valley below disappeared into gold and shadow. The old ruins shimmered one last time before fading into silence. Somewhere out in the stars, the great fleets of Cathari and Varn slowed their guns. The signal from the ancient beacon repeated across every system, a gentle voice that said, "We were meant to heal, not destroy." And in that voice, mixed with the pulse of the stars, was laughter soft and kind, the sound of an alien nurse who once said, "You held my hand through the night,